coming back after a month. I've missed all of you so much.
I miss you.
I missed Wednesday.
You stayed 1 month in America. I feel looks younger.
Yeah?
Looks younger.
I look younger. Well,
right? I don't know how to. I just
So
feel.
you're really relaxed.
Yeah, relaxing.
No,
No?
my God, this
No?
was the most arduous. We really worried, will we make it?
Yeah.
Mei and I mean, you know, we're used to
Busy.
having,
You have business work to do. You know.
well, all our business work to do, plus take care of the kids, just the two of us, which is not something that is in our normal.
I asked the mother,
we have
so did you
have
went to
multiple
the?
aunties, we have grandma, we have, you know, so many people.
Wow.
And the kids have, you know, basically they're in school where it's like 24/7 kind of a thing. But it was really, really, really good because my mom got very, very close to them and totally fell in love with them. It's just completely now, like they have to talk to her every day on the phone and stuff. It's kind of cool.
Very good.
It's very, very good. It's very good. It's good for her. Now instead of being ready to go on to the next existence, she's saying, okay, the next trip, which is a huge change. It's gigantic. The earth moved. It was that kind of a trip for everybody, for my mom specifically. And so that's really kind of why we go there. Where we go is it's just there to be there with her. And this is was really good because she absolutely jumped into being the kid's grandma. So we are continuing with our lecture. This is the second year we've been doing these videos. The opening of the eyes. We're now on page 45, carving out our own destiny through our own will and action.
Yes.
But since it's been 4 weeks since we read for this, I'm going to go over to page 44. And in the middle of page 44, on the first column, says the heart of a religion or philosophy lies in clarifying cause and effect, which is the truth of what we're about to discuss, because we're going to talk about the fivefold comparison, right? That's the chapter we're on, chapter 4. And then we'll be able to get into chapter 5, which is just like, so cool. All right, so I'm going to start reading. Ready? All right, in the middle of page 44, column 1. The heart of a religion or philosophy lies in clarifying cause and effect. Why? I start out by asking a question. Why would he say the heart of a religion or philosophy lies in clarifying cause and effect? Because it's very specific to what we're talking about right now. This is what Nichiren qualified as the basis of the validity of a teaching. That's why he's comparing Confucianism and Brahmanism and Buddhism. Okay? Right? We started out with there are 3 kinds of yada, yada, yada. Okay? Right? The heart of a religion or philosophy lies in clarifying cause and effect. The great teacher Tiantai of China cites 5 outstanding characteristics of the Lotus Sutra, which he sums up as the 5 major principles: name, essence, quality, function, and teaching. Of these, quality means the central doctrine or teaching of a sutra, its heart or core. More specifically, Tiantai states, it is none other than the principle of cause and effect. The principle of cause and effect to which Tiantai refers is in fact the causality of life, wherein individuals who are steeped in misery, cause, reveal their most sublime inner potential, overcoming their sufferings, and establish a state of life of indestructible happiness. Effect. What would that be called? What would that process be? The principle of cause and effect to which Tiantai refers is in fact the causality of life, wherein individuals who are steeped in misery, cause, reveal their most sublime inner potential, overcome their sufferings, and establish a state of life of indestructible happiness. Effect. What's he talking about? What is that process? The transition from being a common mortal to being a Buddha. Right? Read what he says here. The principle of cause and effect. It's because, so in other words, he's talking about the simultaneity of cause and effect of the law of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. He's not talking about, I slapped you, you got angry. He's not talking about that cause and effect. he's talking about the simultaneity of cause and effect that allows us to reveal our Buddhahood in a single moment.
Yeah.
Okay? It's forever present no matter who we are, regardless of our circumstance. Let me read it again. The principle of cause and effect to which Tentai refers, as he talks about quality, right? He's talked about the five outstanding characteristics he called them. Name, essence, quality, function, and teaching. Quality means the central doctrine or teaching of a sutra, its heart or its core. More specifically, states that it's none other than the principle of cause and effect. I could go, if there's a number 2 there, let me go to this real quick and tell you what he's saying to clarify further what I'm saying. 4. Number 2. He says, the profound quality refers to the key point. It is represented by the causality arising from the Buddha's own practice. Do you understand? What is the Buddha's own practice?
Chanting?
Yeah, but what is the result of the Buddha's own practice? What occurs when the Buddha practices the Buddha's practice?
Buddhahood activation.
Buddhahood, actual Ichinen Sanzen occurs, right? This is all about, still, again, actual Ichinen Sanzen, all right? So, the principle of cause and effect to which Tentai refers is in fact the causality of life wherein individuals who are steeped in misery, common mortals, right, reveal cause, in misery, that's the cause, reveal their most sublime inner potential. What would that be? Their Buddhahood. Overcoming their sufferings as bodhisattvas of the earth, and establish a state of life of indestructible happiness, that of Buddhahood. Do you understand each part of that phraseology and how it applies? Yeah, you with me? You are with me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're coming back from summertime, right? Tentai. Define the ultimate law of enlightenment as the true aspect. What's that talking about? The ultimate law of enlightenment as the true aspect. That is the core. That is the foundational principle. That's the essence. That is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
Yeah.
Tentai called it the true aspect, referred to it, but he hadn't called it Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Right? But that's what the true aspect is. This true aspect, corresponding to essence in the 5 major principles, he says, can only be described as unfathomable, beyond the power of words to describe, beyond the mind's power to comprehend. That pretty much sums up the reality of what Nam Myoho Renge Kyo is, doesn't it? Right? We can talk about Nam Myoho Renge Kyo as the most fundamental principle, the most fundamental aspect of all things, but wrapping our heads completely around that is very difficult. And understanding it clearly and correctly is very difficult. Okay? That's why so few people do it. All right? He indicates, however, that the true aspect is inextricably related to the causality of attaining Buddhahood. What's that mean? What did he just say? He said that without your relationship with Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, you cannot attain actual Ichinen Sanzen. All right? It's only through that essence, that quality, that law of cause and effect. Cause and effect is what allows you to attain Buddhahood. The simultaneity of cause and effect is what allows you to attain Buddhahood in your present form.
Yes.
To borrow an analogy from Tentai, the true aspect, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, can be likened to a vast and unbounded space, while cause and effect can be likened to pillars and beams. With the pillars and beams, the space takes on the shape of a room. At the same time, the pillars and beams could not be called such if they did not shape the space into a room. In other words, if they didn't give substance to this thing. In other words, the depth of the doctrine of causality expounded by a particular teaching correlates to the depth of the law of enlightenment that forms the teaching's basic premise. Do you understand what he's saying? That's how he's creating this qualification of the differentiation of these different teachings, and why ultimately, as we go through the 5-fold comparison in a minute, we're going to see why the Buddhism of the sowing makes everything else provisional. All right? So he's saying, in other words, the death of a doctrine of the doctrine of causality expounded by a particular teaching correlates to the depth of the law of enlightenment that forms the teaching's basic premise. Hi, babe. Anik. We're kind of rereading the last bit of what we read last time. So we're on page 44. You haven't missed anything. Okay? The teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, propagated by Nichiren, consists of the ultimate mystic law, Myoho, and the cause and effect that it is based on, Renge. Do you all understand that? Myoho is the mystic law, Renge is the causality, right?
Yes.
All right? We can regard this single phrase, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, as expressing the ultimate law of cause and effect for attaining Buddhahood. That's what I just slowly read through, right? Therefore, by chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo even one time, we can realize the cause and effect of enlightenment in our lives at that very moment. What does it mean there? Why? Why can we chant it one time and have this profound thing occur? Because by chanting it one time, we're no longer a Buddha in theory. We have now heard the name and the words of the truth. We have now entered the second phase of the 6 stages of practice, right? Mm-hmm. That's the significance of that single daimoku. That unlocks the relationship with Nam-myoho Renge-kyo that has been inherent in our lives since time without beginning, and either lights the fuse for it to be ignited again for another lifetime, or initiates it as a relationship that has always existed but now has become manifest. Do you understand? Was that clear? All right, so looking at the religious and philosophical traditions discussed by Nichiren, we can see many differences in how they explain the causality of life. In this treatise, Nichiren evaluates the relative depth of each teaching through the 5-fold comparison, thereby clarifying the ultimate causality for attaining Buddhahood, which he's going to qualify it as the Buddhism of the sowing, which is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, right? Right? Which has not existed up until this point. That's why he's got to do the 5-fold comparison to qualify that this is the ultimate teaching. It's not just another teaching. It's not just his way of viewing things. It's the ultimate truth. All right? As the essential teaching for leading all people of the latter day to enlightenment. So, what is the promise of the Lotus Sutra? All people can attain Buddhahood.
In a lifetime.
In their present form.
Mm-hmm.
Right. All people are actually, in fact, Buddhas exactly as they are. That's the whole point we're going to get into the next chapter. All right? But again, it's Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. It's not the Buddhism of the harvest. That Lotus Sutra. It's the Lotus Sutra of the latter day of the law that allows this to occur. Do you understand? It's only in the latter day of the law this can occur, because only in the latter day of the law does the Buddhism of the sowing make its advent, make itself known. That's what's occurring right now in the opening of the eyes as a teaching. Okay, this is for the first time being revealed ever. He's spoken to it many times, but why is this his most profound teaching? Why do we put so much of emphasis on, this go show, the opening of the eyes? Because it's to open our eyes to the truth of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo as the ultimate teaching, the original teaching. Nichiren is the original teacher. Okay? It's to separate. This is the point of separation, clarifying the separation of the Buddhism of the harvest. That was then. This is now the Buddhism of the sowing, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Do you understand? All right, so let us now discuss the content of the 5-fold comparison based on Nichiren's statements. All right? So President Ikeda continues with this lecture. I love this, because this is basically what he was just talking about. Why is this the ultimate teaching? Why is this the supreme teaching? Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Why? Because it allows us to carve out our destiny through our own will and action. That's called Buddha. All right? No other teaching allows us to do that. No other teaching says we are the Buddha, so that we can do that, right? All the other provisional teachings, we must rely on the teacher. We must rely on a gradual process of attainment. All right? This says, no, it's already there. Unlock the door, open it. It's already there in its entirety. You just have to uncap it. Carving out, so the subtitle on page 45, we're starting again from, this is where we're starting the new material from last time. Carving out our destiny through our own will and action. I love that. That's what we do. 1. Buddhism. This is the first of the 5 comparisons of the 5-fold comparison. Buddhism is superior to non-Buddhist teachings. The first comparison is between Buddhism, the internal way, and the non-Buddhist teachings of China and India, the external way. Now he's going to get into all this stuff about where everybody else fell short in terms of their perception of causality and the law of cause and effect. Buddhism teaches that the principal cause determining our happiness or unhappiness lies within our own lives, and that we are the protagonists with the power to decide our own destiny. Okay? What's the flip side of that?
Illusion.
The delusion that we also are the ones that form our own limitations and difficulty and unhappiness. Okay?
Yeah.
So, this is why Buddhism is called the internal way. It's called the internal way because the entire emphasis and empowerment comes from us. Doesn't come from something outside of us. It's something that is inherently us. It's the inherent power of life itself. All right? By contrast, a closer look at the non-Buddhist religions and philosophies reveals, first, that some do not recognize the principle of causality as it concerns individual fortune or misfortune. In other words, a god or a caste system, let's go to Brahmanism, has created a hierarchical manifestation of life on earth that is differentiated by superior and inferior. Okay? Simultaneity of cause and effect says there is no such thing as inferior and superior. Okay? The grand equality. Okay? So, he says, first of all, other religions, a lot of them don't recognize the principle of causality as it concerns individual fortune or misfortune, which are created by the individual, not by some outside influence or supreme being. Okay? Or some baseless chance. All right? While some expound doctrines of accidentalism or indeterminism, everybody understands what that is? Accidentalism. There's no functional reason why something occurs. It occurs by accident. Or indeterminism, which means nobody knows why it happens, it just happens. Okay? That's indeterminism. According to which everything is coincidence or chance. Others expound doctrines of determinism or fatalism. In other words, it's already locked in. It can't be changed. No matter what you do, you have no control over it. It's the source power of power and destiny greater than you, preceding you, controlling you. You must bow down and worship something to beg for its, good stead upon you. You don't create it. Something else creates it and bestows it upon you. All right? Based on your being subservient. While some expound doctrines of accidentalism or indeterminism, according to which everything is coincidence or chance, others expound doctrines of determinism or fatalism, which hold that regardless of one's own efforts or actions, everything is predetermined or predestined. There are also those who strike a middle ground between these two perceptions. This refers to the teachings of the 3 aesthetics, who we've talked about, right? We're going to end up talking about, weirdly enough, we're going to end up talking at length about those guys after I had no idea we would. Okay, so we won't be coming out of the woodwork when we get into all that. This refers to the teachings of the 3 aesthetics who regarded as the founders of the non-Buddhist philosophies of India. Similar doctrines can also be found in various philosophies and currents of thought prevalent today. Among the philosophies scrutinized by Nichiren are also those that, while recognizing the principle of causality within the parameters of present existence, fail to pursue it into periods before birth and after death, asserting that what happens in those periods is unknowable. These are represented by such schools of thought as Confucianism and Taoism, and would also include Western rationalism, which is based on the development of modern science. Everybody's with me? All right. These kinds of philosophies cannot These kinds of philosophies cannot satisfyingly answer such questions as, why are people born into different circumstances? They don't deal with karma, is really what this is saying. They don't perceive karma. All right? The law of karma is the differentiation in the manner of thought between the Buddhism of the sowing, and what he's talking about here. Yeah. These kinds of philosophies cannot satisfyingly answer, because they'll just say it's God, or it's just some other thing that's a platitude answer that doesn't give you any real insight into really what's making it happen. Why are people born into different circumstances? It's God's will. Or, I don't know about Islam, how they qualify those things, but it's, in Christianity, everything that happens is somehow God determined for it to occur. Do you understand that? I used to be a Christian. I know that to be true. All right? That is as ridiculous as that sounds. Okay? So then that opens up, well, why would God do that? And everybody says, I don't know, because I'm not God, but we don't question God's plan. So that's why he's saying unsatisfyingly. Their answers are filled with
question marks.
Baloney. I mean, it's just, it's no sub. It's like, who would believe it's? Who would believe that? I guess a lot of people do, but it's not very convincing to me. It's not the satisfying answers I've gotten out of the Buddhism of the sowing, where everything makes sense. Everything has a specific answer that's real. Okay? Okay. And why are there cases where the effects of good and evil actions do not appear in this lifetime? That's another thing. Why do the good always die? Why do the bad live to be old-aged and, have ripped everybody off? Okay, those kinds of questions. Again, there's no satisfying answer to any of that. Because the answer to most of those kinds of questions have to do with causality, karma. Right? Single life, multiple lifetimes. Accordingly, they also cannot fully answer existential questions like, why was I born? What is the purpose of my life? Indian Brahmin, what, just to go to heaven? Yeah, I mean, what a purpose. They're not satisfyingly answered questions. Yeah. Again, there's this whole level of relevance that's then, again, subsumed to faith. You must have faith. But the pragmatic truth of how it's answered is not given in any kind of detail that the faith can be based on something that's really makes sense. Okay? Indian Brahmanism, the 6 schools of philosophy, and I'm going to go ahead and go back again to this to give you the six schools of philosophy, and would not to be confused with the 6 non-Buddhist teachers. But the 6 leading schools of Brahmin philosophy in ancient India, they are Samyakya, Yoga, Nanya, Vaisheshika, Mimasarma, and Vedanta schools. These are all different schools, Brahmanic, Indian schools. They have nothing to do with Buddhism. Pardon me?
They're all Indian.
They're all Indian. Okay? He's saying Indian Brahmanism, which we all understand what that is, right? That's the Vedic tradition. That's the basis of all Indian philosophy, of which everything else came from. Right? Buddhism borrows from Brahmanism in terms of certain concepts, right? Some of the Buddhist gods were originally Brahmin gods, okay? The 6 schools of philosophy and other teachings in ancient India do expound the causality of life operating throughout past, present, and future. So they do talk about endless beginning, endless future, right? But it is a causality colored by determinism or fatalism, because Brahmanism is the basis of the caste system, right? So the cream was born as the cream at the top because of influences that were beyond the control of any of those individuals, and no one can escape their fatalistic basis of where they're born, the caste system.
Yes.
All right, Brahmanism is the caste system. They are, and even though they see past, present, and future, they are colored. Their causality is colored by determinism, which is not cause and effect. You can't make any cause to escape a caste. And subject to external forces such as nature or a deity that controls human destiny. In other words, something that you're praying to that's actually influencing in your behalf based on your prayer being received as worthy. So again, nothing really lies on you. You got to depend on something else to like you, listen to you, cut you slack, forgive you. You as an individual are not the source of anything. In everything I've discussed up to now. Do you understand?
So
Whereas the Buddhism sowing is the complete opposite of that. You are the source of everything. Nothing outside of you really exists. You are part of everything. Everything is associated. There is no distinction between anything. Do you understand? That's the Buddhism of the sowing. So he's saying, as a result, these teachings seriously limit human will and autonomy. Why does it limit human will? Because number one, it says you're not powerful enough or capable of changing anything without relying on something outside of you that you've got to ask for the help of. Okay? You're not the source of the power. The thing outside of you is the source of the power, and you're beseeching to have that power somehow influence you because of some circumstance of being viewed properly. That's the whole, sacrifices to the gods, all that kind of stuff is based on that kind of thinking. It's all on something outside of you. Even Christianity, even Islam. Everything other than the Buddhism of the sowing, if you think about it. Even the provisional Buddhist teachings, they're all based on finding someday in some future existence a correct path that will ultimately get you to the Buddha land, because you're not there now. You can't exist in it in this lifetime. You can't enter it in this lifetime. Do you understand? So is everybody with me?
Yes.
All right. So this is one of the reasons why Buddhism is superior to non-Buddhist teachings. Because Buddhism involves the law of causality and karma and the three realms of existence of past, present, and future. Okay? And autonomy.
If
What?
somebody asks you about your belief, you have to say, I am, or what you are studying. We are studying the Buddhism of the later days.
Yeah, we're actually, again, we're
Or we have to say Nichiren Buddhism.
well, you don't
Which
have
one?
to say,
Nothing? Okay.
it's easier to say the Buddhism of the soul.
The Buddhism of the sowing is
And
the
nobody's
better
going to
answer.
understand what you're
I
talking
know.
about.
No.
Okay? But if you say
Later
the
days, they would
Buddhism of
understand it's
Nichiren,
later in
no,
the-
again, I say this very specifically for a reason. If you say Nichiren Buddhism, there are a lot of different versions of what
Also,
that is.
okay. It's not
Okay?
Okay.
If I say the Buddhism of
Okay.
the sowing, without qualifying what it is, I'm saying the correct thing, the correct answer. Because whether you understand correctly the Buddhism of the sowing or not, it doesn't change what the Buddhism of the sowing is.
Yeah.
Okay? It's a different Buddhism than the Buddhism of the harvest. It's not based on the Buddhism of Shakyamuni.
So the people we are going to ask you questions. The Buddhism of
Buddhism of the sowing, which says that each individual is already a Buddha exactly as they are. As
Okay.
President Ikeda will so powerfully, as I've said a million times, but President Ikeda will say again, and then you can finally believe it for fact.
So Buddhism of the sowing that says that you are a Buddha.
You are the Buddha exactly as you are.
Exactly as you are. You are a Buddha. I am a Buddha.
Exactly as we are, without changing anything about it. This is the thing.
perfect.
The difference between a common mortal and a Buddha is enlightened and a common mortal is not. A Buddha is not deluded and a common mortal is deluded. And what is the source of the delusion of the common mortal that separates common mortal from Buddhahood, from Buddha? What is the delusion?
You were not awakened.
Yeah, but what is awakened?
You were
You are the Buddha.
That you are the Buddha.
Yeah.
There's nothing more than this realization. Fundamental darkness is nothing more than the influence that tries to make you not believe that. That's all. That's all. Because when you are the Buddha, when you perceive yourself as the Buddha, when you understand that you can be the Buddha, your power is now limitless. Right?
When you
There's
say, you
this
say that to
autonomy
somebody,
or
you are a
will.
Buddha, they are surprised and they are shocked and they want. They are
They
a
don't
kind of a,
understand that.
Right.
yeah, but they
Present
are, you
indicator
know, they
is,
are
as I've said a
kind of
million
defensive. Yeah,
Yes.
defensive.
Yes, they
And
become
they think,
defensive
I
because
am
they already have a
maybe the
preconceived notion
Yeah,
of
yeah,
Buddha.
yeah.
And
Because they've all been seeing an altar with a big fat guy or a very skinny guy, one or the other. You know? Yeah, it's already been determined as something outside of themselves because they're looking at it from the provisional
And then-
teaching standpoint.
yeah, something
Rather than the
higher.
Buddhism of the sowing, they're basing it on the Buddhism of the harvest. And that's why you say the Buddhism of the sowing. Not to be confused with the Buddhism of the harvest. This isn't Shakyamuni's Buddhism. This is Nichiren's Buddhism. They overlay, but one is for the latter day and the other is for the time preceding that.
And one cannot be without the other one.
Absolutely, because one preceded the
As a
again,
foundation.
as a foundation. Again,
I mean,
if
as
Nichiren
a-
would have come out with the Buddhism of the sowing and just suddenly started laying out all this doctrine with nobody that had ever backed it up or no foundational continuum to say that's why this is that was then and this is now. That doctrine even says there will be a determinate time period. The Lotus Sutra itself says in the latter day, the Lotus Sutra and as the 28 chapters that were translated by Kumarajiva will lose the power to affect the change of bringing enlightenment because it will have become so twisted and convoluted. Its original intent will have been distorted by erroneous teachers. We're going to get into all this. Okay, erroneous teachers are the biggest problem. People that think they know what they don't know. That's why I'm so excited because I've been saying what I think without hesitation, without being afraid to say it. And now I'm going to be able to show you Daisaku Ikeda saying exactly the same thing I've been saying. Okay? So let me get to that point.
Yeah, sure.
We got to get through the fivefold comparison first. Then we'll start with a vow for all the a vow for the enlightenment of all people, the deep power deep within our lives that can overcome all obstacles. That's what Buddhahood is. All right? So he says, in short, the ancient teachings of India and China, other than Buddhism, either fail to explain causality, or if they do explain it, only offer a partial and biased doctrine. Do you understand
Yes.
what the point is now, right? So the law of causality is the key differentiation as the source of determinate circumstance. It's not the influence of a God, a creator, or anything else. It's an infinite law of causality that has no beginning, has no end, and contains all things equally. All right? In short, the ancient teachings of India and China, other than Buddhism, so we're talking about Brahmanism, Confucianism, Taoism, all right, either fail to explain causality, or if they do explain it, offer only a partial and biased doctrine. This is Nichiren's conclusion. So who figured this limitation out? Nichiren. That's why there is a Buddhism of the sowing. Because he was able to discern that, aha, we're at transition time. We're at a transition point. The Buddhism of the harvest is no longer working. The prayers are no longer being answered. That's why there's all this shit happening in our environment right now. That's why there are comets and earthquakes and the country's being invaded by the Mongols. Our prayers aren't being answered. Why? We're not practicing the correct teaching. The correct teaching's already expired. The latter day has already begun. According to the principles of the Buddha, of the essential teaching of the Lotus Sutra, it's time for the true teaching to be revealed. Who will reveal the true teaching? Bodhisattva Jogyo. Okay? Do you get it? Do you understand what's setting up here? All right? He's explaining why. I may not be Bodhisattva Jogyo, but I've already started the process that he will continue. Okay? Knowing full and well, that what was prophesied as Bodhisattva Jogyo and his advent and the propagation of the correct teaching in the latter day is his Buddhism of the sowing, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Doesn't matter. Bodhisattva Jogyo is another transient identity. Okay? He's the original teacher. In short, I go to the last paragraph one more time. On page 45. In short, the ancient teachings of India and China, other than Buddhism, either fail to explain causality, or if they do explain it, only offer a partial and biased doctrine. This is Nichiren's conclusion. All right? Therefore, in the opening of the eyes, this Gosho, for the first time, he says, with regard to the founders of these religions and philosophies, they are no more than infants who cannot understand the principles of cause and effect. Now, these great teachers that have been honored throughout the historical preceding centuries, he's going, they're nothing more than infants compared to correct understanding. All right? Yeah, that's like really making it clear. These guys can't hold my jockstrap. Buddhism, the internal way, however, teaches that individuals are responsible for everything that happens to them. Simply put, the idea that one reaps what one sows. The reason we can calmly accept the concept of the strict law of cause and effect operating in our lives is that we apprehend the truth that we inherently possess within us the boundless, transformative power and potential that is the Buddha nature. We are the Buddha, exactly as we are. We don't have to get to a point before all of that is true. Right? It's true in this moment. For us to keep making efforts to become happy, we need to know that the possibility for happiness exists within our lives. Or else we won't make those efforts. We'll make them with a half-assed sense of, I'm not really sure this is getting anywhere. All right? We sleepwalk through them. We don't walk through them with conviction. This is the power of faith.
Yes.
All right? Buddhism, the internal way, enables us to awaken to our personal autonomy and responsibility. What's that mean? He says that is to recognize that we have the power to carve out our destiny through our own will and actions in the present. But what's he really talking about? Buddhism, the internal way, enables us to awaken to our personal autonomy and responsibility. What is our personal autonomy and responsibility? Our personal autonomy is the fact that we are Buddhists. We don't have to rely on anything else to do anything. That's personal autonomy. Autonomy is like stand alone. That's autonomy. An autonomous region is a region that's governed by itself. It doesn't rely on anything outside of itself. Personal autonomy. Do we rely on anything outside of ourselves when we're chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo Gohonzan? In fact, no. It is our faith that allows us to bring forth the nature of Buddhahood from our life and manifest the power that exists within our life. All right? And responsibility. What's the personal autonomy? I just said that's Buddhahood. Right? It's our Buddha nature. Right? So then, when he says personal autonomy and responsibility, why does he combine those? Personal responsibility and or autonomy, personal autonomy and responsibility. You don't get that personal autonomy unless you have a sense of personal responsibility. They go hand in hand. They're never separate. You never become the Buddha for the sake of personal autonomy. I can do whatever I want for my own pleasure, for my own way. It's always for the sake of making all others equal to yourself. Right? It's all about Buddhas always manifest for the sake of creating Buddhas. Not creating Buddhas. Freeing people to be Buddhas. Do you understand? Providing the teaching that allows them to become equal to the Buddha himself. All right, so that is to recognize that we have the power to carve out our own destiny through our own will and actions. That only comes through the Buddha nature that exists in our life.
Yeah.
All right, and actions in the present. But second of the five-fold comparison, Mahayana Buddhism seeks to clarify the cause for attaining happiness. 2. Mahayana Buddhism is superior to Hinayana Buddhism. Bottom of page 46. The next level of the five-fold comparison is the comparison between Mahayana and Hinayana Buddhism. Is everybody with me?
Yes.
You all know what Hinayana Buddhism, right?
Yes.
Okay. In the opening of the eyes, however, Nichiren hardly touches on this particular comparison. He mentions it in passing in his comparison of true Mahayana and provisional Mahayana, or more specifically, his comparison of the theoretical teaching of the Lotus Sutra and the provisional pre-Lotus Sutra teachings, when he refers to censoring people of the two vehicles, voice hearers and cause awakened ones, who were practitioners of the Hinayana teachings. So, although it is not discussed separately, we can view the comparison of Mahayana and Hinayana Buddhism as being included in this particular comparison. Buddhism is referred to as the internal way. Nevertheless, it encompasses a wide variety of teachings. Among these, the Hinayana teachings aim to enable people to free themselves from earthly desires, which are the cause of suffering, and attain nirvana, a state of supreme peace and tranquility, through carrying out practices such as upholding precepts and engaging in meditation. But the happiness to which Hinayana teachings aspire is passive, as they merely focus on eliminating the cause of unhappiness rather than actively seeking to enable people to open the path to their own happiness, much less open the way to happiness for others. Did everybody understand what I just said? I'll read it again, more slowly. Okay, you understand what he said in the previous paragraph, though, where he said Nietzsche really didn't get into this whole thing that much of comparing Mahayana is superior to Hinayana, because that's almost self-explanatory. You're a Mahayana Buddhist reading this if you're already reading the Lotus Sutra, right? You're not a Hinayana Buddhist. So to have somebody qualify to you that Mahayana is superior to Hinayana is sort of like, duh, that's why I'm a Mahayana Buddhist. All right? That's what President Ikeda has just explained. He doesn't get into a lot of detail to create the differentiation, because he knows you're already a Mahayana Buddhist at a minimum if you've studied the Lotus Sutra, right?
Right.
But what he does qualify here is saying in second paragraph, column 2, Buddhism is referred to as the internal way. Nevertheless, it encompasses a wide variety of teachings. We all understand that, right? Hinayana, pre-Lotus Mahayana, Lotus Mahayana, and the perfect teaching of the latter day of the law. Among these, the Hinayana teachings aim to enable people to free themselves from earthly desires. Why? How? What is Hinayana based on? Very strict rules, very strict adherence to a particular kind of lifestyle, even the kind of clothing you can wear, how you're supposed to conduct yourself, a differentiation between lay people and monks, and okay, it's all filled with hierarchical crap. That's why it's called Hinayana. It's bullshit. It's Buddhism, but it's not correct thinking Buddhism. It was really expedient means. It's very, very expedient means. That's why it was rejected by the Mahayanas when Mahayana Buddhism was created and foundationalized afterward. And understand that the first sutra, the Flower Garland Sutra, okay, under the Bodhi tree, is actually not Hinayana Buddhism. It's Mahayana Buddhism. Hinayana Buddhism came out when he did the Flower Garland Sutra and went, whoo! And he goes, okay, I got to bring this back a little bit. First, I got to get people to understand causality. I got to get them to understand the essential basis of the teaching. That's what Mahayana is all about. It's kindergarten. It's elementary school. It's when we learn things that are given to us that don't require anything beyond what's given to us. They don't allow for expansion. They don't allow for the personal Buddha nature to be the important component, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because can you attain enlightenment in Hinayana Buddhism?
No.
No, you can only get to Arhat. Don't forget that. You can only get to Arhat. Can't even get to Prakyeka Buddha. You can only get to Arhat. Okay? So it doesn't even include the full 10 worlds, for God's sake.
Yeah.
All right? So, Buddha's, okay, among these are the Hinayana teachings aim to enable people to free themselves from earthly desires by denying them, which are the cause of suffering if they're not perceived correctly, and attain nirvana, a state of supreme peace and tranquility, which is to be blown out and to actually eliminate existence. None of that is real. None of that's true. They were all expedient means, and they carry these out by upholding precepts and engaging in meditation. Okay? Mental masturbation. But the happiness to which the Hinayana teachings aspire is passive, as they merely focus on eliminating the cause of unhappiness. Get rid of all your dirt. Okay? Rather than actively seeking to create the light. Now, how do we do it that's Hinayana Buddhism, is subsume the dark side. Okay? But what does Mahayana Buddhism say? Mahayana Buddhism says you can't get rid of the dark side. So rather than worrying about trying to eliminate something that's impossible to eliminate, because it's in the absence of that you're not a living person. Okay? Fundamental darkness is part of the reality and the truth of existence, correct?
Correct.
All right? In Mahayana Buddhism, we expand the light side. Rather than worrying about becoming free of all of our shortcomings, we expand on all of the things that make us great human beings and let that overshadow the dark side. Do you understand?
Yes.
Rather than trying to shrink the dark side, we expand the light. Hinayana is, shrink the, focus on shrinking the dark side and doesn't worry about expanding the light. Okay. But the happiness, is passive. It merely focuses on eliminating rather of much less the way to opening. It doesn't have anything to do with others. It's self-perfection. Everybody's with me?
Yes.
Second to last paragraph, second column, page 46. Moreover, since Hinayana postulates the cause of unhappiness as earthly desires of the 9 worlds that are inherent in our lives, the only way to completely eliminate these desires is to extinguish our lives altogether. That's blown out. That's nirvana, right? The Hinayana approach to enlightenment has accordingly been referred to as reducing the body to ashes and annihilating consciousness, no longer existing. Herein lies the limitation of the Hinayana teachings, because based on the eternity of life, that can never occur. Right?
Right.
Okay. In contrast, the Mahayana teachings, instead of urging the elimination of earthly desires, states that by opening up and manifesting the wisdom of enlightenment, expanding the light side in our lives, which are filled with earthly desires, we can properly control those desires and construct a pure, strong, self-motivated life. This is the principle of earthly desires, our enlightenment. Okay, do you understand? Mm-hmm. All right. Rather than merely helping people eliminate the causes of their unhappiness, the Mahayana teachings actively focus on enabling people to transform those causes into the causes for happiness, as well as to lead others to enlightenment, as well as to lead others to enlightenment, as well as to lead others to enlightenment. Because without that last sentence, you cannot attain Buddhahood in your present form. No Buddha doesn't also lead others to enlightenment. Do you understand? So it's not possible in Hinayana Buddhism. Do you understand? There's no basis to do so. Everybody's with me?
Yes.
Okay.
One question.
Sure.
Who classified the difference between, who drew the line between Mahayana and the Hinayana Buddhism? Who?
Okay.
Shakyamuni?
No. The Mahayanists. The Mahayanists
Yeah, that's why.
made that distinction. So that if you go to the Theravada school, which is in, Sri Lanka and those kinds of places, they say we made up all of this. And they said that they had the original teachings, the original scriptures, and that they had them, and they did. And they held them with great care, only they all rotted.
Yeah, because
when they finally opened up the storehouse where they had kept all these sacred texts, they weren't there in a form that could be read anymore.
yeah, because I know a lot of Buddhists. I mean, they will be very, very unhappy when what they believe has been classified into Hinayana Buddhism.
Of course.
They were like,
Hinayanists will never consider them. Okay, again, understand. That's why we always qualify this, and you should understand this. All right? We don't. It's Theravada Buddhism. We as Mahayanists call it Hinayana. What does Hinayana mean? Very important for you to know this.
yep, pre-lotus suit.
No, it
no.
specifically has a
No.
it has a defined meaning. Hinayana means lesser vehicle.
Yeah,
Yes.
Lesser vehicle. Now, if you're a Hinayana Buddhist, would you
Lesser
say
lower.
I'm practicing the lesser vehicle?
No.
No, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
Okay, and
lower
anybody qualifying that they have, and anybody qualifying you as the lesser vehicle is actually insulting you, right?
Right.
Okay, so you don't go up to somebody practicing Theravada Buddhism and say, "Oh, you're Hinayana." I've done that. I've done that. They were very happy. They were very nice to me until I made that distinction. They were very insulted, and then they qualified to me. But you know what you're doing is completely made up bullshit. There's no basis in the sutras. All the Mahayana sutras were all made up after Shakyamuni, yada yada. And this is all we get into this historical argument over stuff that cannot be proven because I on my vacation read The Living Buddha again, the one that has been retranslated by Burton Watson. God, I got to read that to you. It's so good. It's so good. I was shocked to see. I already know all this, but this is a really good way to be able to explain it. And so, understand that ancient India, they didn't put much emphasis into dates or individuals or even a specific teaching being from a specific teacher. It was about the truth. The truth was this constantly morphing reality that existed as a work in process that was being added to through generations of ponderance and so forth. I mean, that's where you get Vasubandhu and Nagarjuna and all those dudes.
Yeah.
I mean, what were they doing after Shakyamuni died? They weren't just saying the same thing over and over again. They were writing treatises. They were expanding on the thought. They were qualifying and clarifying. What did Nanye and Tentai and Chanan and Myola, all of them, Dengyo, they all added qualifications that did not exist on the surface. All right? So, no, the Hinayanists don't want to be called Hinayanists. It's insulting. We're discussing as Mahayana Buddhists Buddhism and qualifying in the five-fold comparison all the way up to the Buddhism of the sowing, which only Nichiren Buddhists would do. If you're not a Nichiren Buddhist, Buddhism of the harvest is the only Buddhism that there is. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo's after all that, babe. It's a whole different mainstream of Buddhism. It's not anything like all that other stuff, other than it can be overlaid exactly. But again, no. You're asking who qualified Hinayana and Mahayana? The Mahayanas qualified Hinayana as a lesser vehicle.
Lesser, lower
Okay.
vehicle.
I recommend you
Right.
go to read the Living Buddha.
Right,
It will give you a lot of answers.
right. So, them.
Yes. Can I say, in far background, Hinayana,
Hinayana.
yeah, it's like like monks and never go.
Rules, and
Yeah.
more rules. It's
Yeah,
more
yeah.
like I'm more pure than you. It's just like evangelical Christianity, frankly. It's like my pious ass is more pious than yours. It's a contest.
Oh.
Yeah, it is. It's animality. It's religious animality. It's exactly what it is. It's a hierarchical process of who's more pure. It's the basis of how Devadatta attacked Shakyamuni.
Yeah.
Shakyamuni, Devadatta did all these austerities that exceeded even Shakyamuni's abilities as it relates to weird shit that doesn't matter. Okay? And it's 9:01. All right. Well, I won't get. I only got as far as true Mahayana.
Yeah.
I can't believe that, man. I did not think. I didn't even get through the fivefold comparison. I'm so sorry. Did I talk? Was it very clear?
Yes.
Okay. So again, we'll just continue next week getting through the fivefold comparison. True Mahayana reveals that all people are endowed with Buddhahood, and this will qualify true Mahayana versus provisional Mahayana. Okay, and what's true Mahayana
True.
versus provisional Mahayana? True Mahayana is the Lotus Sutra. Okay? And then we get into the theoretical versus the essential, and then we get into the Buddhism of the sowing versus the Buddhism of the harvest. Okay, till next week. Thank you.
Thank you.